from West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by the following.
West Virginia University, online at wvu.edu. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont, online at wvhtf.org.
At the legislature today, bad blood lingers in the Senate after yesterday's action to move the charter schools bill to the floor, and the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act is passed in the Senate. In the House, the Government Organization Committee hears an earful from Democrats about the bill to roll back the prevailing wage on the legislature today. Good evening, I'm Ashton Mara. Tensions between the parties in the Senate remained high today as senators put more than 30 bills to a vote. Democratic members again moved to have some bills read in their entirety, slowing down an already full floor session. After a recess and hours of debate that lasted late into the afternoon, senators finally took up the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. The bill bans late-term abortions or abortions after 20 weeks. Senator Corey Palumbo stood to amend the bill on the floor, changing the ban to 24 weeks, the time at which most doctors agree a fetus can live on its own outside the womb. The amendment sparked plenty of debate.
But I stand up because I do believe that every one of us in this body, every one of us abhors late-term abortions. There's not one of us that supports an abortion on the late trimesters. We are looking for a solution on how to deal with that. I've looked at the body of evidence and the findings. I find the findings, as I look at the findings in this bill, they're contrary to what we're talking about. The findings say that pain capable starts at 8 weeks, and yet we're waiting 20 weeks to say we can't do it with pain. If it's at 8 weeks, why are we not moving this at 8 weeks or 10 weeks or latest 16 weeks instead of 20 weeks? If the point is, and the point was made in committee, and I thought it was very well made by a doctor, that he's not concerned so much about the constitutionality as about pressing this case. Well, my contention is, why do we not make this constitutional where we know it's constitutional at 24 weeks, we know it's constitutional, and how many abortions can we stop late term by taking that action, that method, that direction?
And I would argue that this absolutely is constitutional, Mr. President. And the reason is I've followed a lot of court cases, and I've looked at them in many different arenas. But whenever you look at court cases, you look at which ones line up with the issue. So looking at court cases that line up with the issue of abortion, Justice Kennedy, who everyone on every single side of this would agree is a swing vote on the Supreme Court when it comes to abortion issues, stated that when medical powers of higher authority are in disagreement, it is up to the state legislatures to look at their evidence and determine if that evidence is enough to determine that the bill would be constitutional. Mr. President, that is exactly what we have here today. We have higher medical authority that is in complete disagreement on whether it's pain capable or whether it's not. And it's up to us, the body of the legislature, to look at those findings and determine that there's enough medical evidence to say that, yes, those children feel pain.
This bill is here today. This bill is constitutional by almost every measure out there. There are half a dozen other states that have a very similar bill that's been passed, legislation enacted, and none of those states have seen their legislation go down to the constitutional challenge. So I would say we very much need to support this measure but reject this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
The question is whether it's constitutional or not. Well, that is a good question. And with all due respect to my colleague across the aisle there, we won't know that until we put ourselves in the experiment of seeing how this court challenge is going to turn out. Because there's going to be a challenge, whether it's our state or another one, and if it's our state, it's going to be an expensive challenge. But at 24 weeks, undoubtedly this bill would be constitutional, and therefore I would be able to uphold my oath not only as a legislator, but as an attorney, which I also take an oath to only do things within the bounds of the Constitution. More importantly for all of our members is that if the bill would be found to be unconstitutional after passage, we have no maximum time period in West Virginia. Right now, there is no time period at which a woman, through her own choice and through what she believes her constitutional right, can not request an abortion. We need that time limit in West Virginia, and to turn it to 24 weeks, which is a 2-week difference. And by the way, for all of our senators, this bill, of course, was passed out of this body last session. But to make it 24 weeks, which is a reasonable difference of 14 days, we would guarantee that West Virginia finally has a maximum period in which a woman can constitutionally request an abortion. I urge support of this amendment. I urge support so that I can vote for this bill, because without it, I cannot.
Bills similar to this have been passed in at least 10 states. I think 3 of them have been challenged, and all 3 of those have been held unconstitutional. So to suggest that, according to every standard out there, this bill is constitutional is just blatantly false. Whether a court in West Virginia would follow that precedent, we really don't know. But according to all the evidence out there from cases that are already in the line, I don't see any way this bill will be found to be constitutional. And our job as legislators is to support our Constitution, not to challenge it, not to try to change it, not to try to encourage the Supreme Court to make a different ruling on constitutionality. It's to support the Constitution that we have in place. I know what this is about, just as everyone else here does. This is about a national movement to bring this issue back to the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, I would suggest that we don't need to be a part of that. We need to be a part of doing what's right for West Virginia, and making this amendment to make this bill clearly constitutional, in my view, is the right thing for us to do.
Palumbo's amendment ultimately failed. Democratic Senator Herb Snyder also tried to amend the bill to include an exception for rape and incest. That amendment also failed. Senators approved the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act 29-5. The bill has already passed the House in the same form and now goes to the governor for his consideration. Senators put dozens of other bills to a vote this afternoon as well, some of which had members crossing party lines to vote against. Senate Bill 109 was one of the first senators clashed over. The bill takes the power to create local smoking ordinances away from appointed county health boards and puts it back in the hands of elected county commissioners. It also allows veteran organizations like VFWs and casinos in the state to be exempt from any public smoking ban. Senator Ron Stallings tried to amend the bill in 4 ways, 2 of which were approved. The First Amendment requires a casino or veteran facility to publicize there is smoking inside and prevents anyone under the age of 18 from being permitted in smoking areas. The second requires county commissioners to hold a public hearing before granting an exemption. There was bipartisan support and opposition to the bill. Republican Tom Tacubo, a doctor, spoke against it.
I understand people say, well, they want personal liberties and go into these places, but as the senator from Boone commented, this is more than just an issue for the 30% or so that smoke. The vast majority don't want to have to go in there and breathe cigarettes, but they want to go with their buddies and have a drink and spend the evening without their actual health or even their life being risked because of somebody else's choice. And I think when your personal liberty bleeds over and not only compromises the health but the potential life of the individual sitting next to you, not to mention the workers and everyone else that's in these establishments, I think it's where we need to make a stand. I mean, our role should be to make the state healthier.
Republican Senator Charles Trump backed the bill.
This really is not an issue about anything other than freedom. And who makes decisions for us? You know, is it going to be unelected, a bureaucratic board, a health department? And you know, I want to laud them for the work they do, but they have a narrow mission, and their mission is to focus on health and solely health. And we don't ask them to balance other things. We don't ask them to balance people's rights. That's our job. That is our job. We don't ask them to consider economic consequences of decisions they make. They have a limited, narrow focus, health, and they're good at it. they look carefully at issues relating to health, but it's to elected officials, county, state, to make the decisions that require balancing of rights and liberties versus, an over-encroaching bureaucracy.
The bill passed 22-12. A similar piece of legislation died in a House committee last week. The Senate's version will now be sent to the House for its consideration. Senators approved the governor's bill to help make craft brewing a more viable industry in the state. Senator Bob Williams explained the bill came as a result of a work group of lawmakers, was improved upon by the governor, and then 2 Senate committees before it came to the floor.
Mr. President, I suggest this is exactly the process that we should be following. This is an idea that came from the people who were affected by the regulations that were in place. The legislature, the governor have improved this bill to where it's a good piece of legislation. It's not the most important piece of legislation that we pass in this session, but it's a legislation that will create jobs. It will remove some government regulation from an industry that has the potential to grow. And quite frankly, Mr. President, this is not about beer. This is about tourism.
The bill passed on a vote of 32-2. A bill to simplify the process for farmers in the state to sell their products caused some debate between members. Senate Bill 304 would require farmers to apply for a permit through the State Department of Health and Human Resources to sell their products at farmers markets. For $15, the annual permit would allow farmers to sell their products at any farmers market in the state. Senator Doug Facemeyer, a grocer from Braxton County, worries the bill, which is meant to promote West Virginia's agriculture industry, could be taken advantage of by farmers from other states.
If you're a small peach farmer, maybe you've got half an acre of peaches, you can't compete with someone out of state who's going to bring them. You don't have the packing facilities. You don't have the facilities to box them. You don't have any way of grading them. If we're not careful right here, the intent of this bill is going to be turned away, because what we're doing is we're opening it up for people to bring their product in here. They don't pay any taxes, they don't pay any fees, they don't do anything at these markets. And the intent of this was to allow the local farmers to grow their stuff and sell West Virginia products. And I just think that we have to be careful here what we're doing, because what we're going to do is put our own farmers at a real unfair disadvantage.
Trump says the state cannot prohibit anyone from selling their goods in West Virginia just because they are not a resident of the state. The bill was approved 33-1. Facemeyer was the single vote against it. Coming up, news from the House side of the Capitol. First, here's a look at what's coming up in the Senate tomorrow.
2 bills up for passage in the Senate tomorrow: Senate Bill 14, creating charter schools, and House Bill 2213, the governor's bill to reduce the deposit of excess lottery proceeds into the infrastructure fund by $10 million for fiscal year 2016 to balance the state budget. Among the bills on second reading, Senate Bill 347 to remove the requirement of a license to carry a concealed weapon. Senate Bill 377 that manufacturers or sellers of a prescription drug or device may not be held liable in a product liability action for a claim based upon inadequate warning or instruction. Senate Bill 393, the governor's bill to reform the juvenile justice system. Senate Bill 409, prohibiting project labor agreements from being part of the competitive bid process on governmental construction projects. Senate Bill 411, to address the amount of litigation relating to asbestos claims. The bill establishes procedures for the handling of asbestos and silica litigation and to enhance the ability of the judicial system to manage such litigation. Senate Bill 434 to reduce racing days and provide additional reasons for reduction in live racing dates. Senate Bill 537 to change the mandatory school instructional days from 180 days to the equivalent minutes in order to provide flexibility to counties in meeting school board instructional day rules. And House Bill 2523 to create a special fund to offset costs for the West Virginia State Police 100th anniversary in 2019.
A bill to scale back the state's prevailing wage has made it one step further in the legislative process after being approved by a House committee today. As Beth Voorhees reports, before its approval, Democratic members of the committee tried to make some major changes to the bill, but failed.
Members of the House Government Organization Committee took up Senate Bill 461 for the first time after a public hearing last week. As it passed the Senate, the bill changes the way the state's prevailing wage is calculated. Prevailing wage is the hourly, benefit, and overtime rates agreed to on all state-funded construction and improvement projects. The Senate's version would take the calculation away from the Division of Labor and charge Workforce West Virginia and the Business and Economic Research Centers at Marshall and West Virginia universities to find a new methodology. For this year, they would be required to come up with a new wage by July 1st. The House committee amended the bill to say if the calculation is not completed by the July 1st deadline, there would be no prevailing wage in West Virginia until the methodology is finalized. But Jennifer Shan, director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at Marshall University, told the committee she's confident she and her fellow economists at both universities can meet the deadline. Still, Democratic members of the committee tried and failed to amend the bill. Some tried to move the deadline for calculation to September 30th. Others to lower the cap for the prevailing wage to kick in for public projects from $500,000 to $250,000. All of the efforts failed. Democrats, however, continued to speak against the bill and its passage before a final vote, including delegates Isaac Spinagle, Jim Morgan, and Mike Caputo.
So we should be sitting here focusing on raising wages and increasing the incomes of our people. Instead, the first bill we get out is to cut wages, to gut them, so we can get below Mississippi. We're putting profits over people, and this is not moving the state of West Virginia forward.
As I came in this morning and walked down the hall through the group of workers who were out there, I thought to myself, this is their livelihood. That's what they're here for. We were elected to do a job. I think that many campaigned on the job of we will make more jobs for West Virginia. We will have economic reform for West Virginia. I believe that at one time early on the floor, I made the statement that West Virginia is watching you, and I hope they see what you're doing, because I don't believe you're living up to your campaign promises.
And we're here today trying to pass a bill that's going to slash their wages. You know it, I know it, everybody in this House knows this is going to cut wages for working class people. Now, I've been here 19 years. I've heard other states do it this way, other states do it this way. We need to be more like other states. Let's take a look at what other states do. With the exception of Maryland, we're going to be the only state that has a $500,000 threshold. I've heard from as many companies as I have workers that said this is going to put them out of business, that all these skilled workers are going to lose their jobs because unskilled, possibly undocumented workers from out of state and out of state companies is going to swoop in here and take these contracts. As the gentleman said, these are our community members. These are the Little League coaches, the Boy Scout leaders, the Girl Scout leaders of our communities. And we come here to cut their wages? We ought to be ashamed of ourselves.
The committee ultimately approved the bill on party lines. Senate Bill 461 relating to the prevailing wage will now go before the full House for its consideration. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Beth Voorhees.
Also in the House today, the Education Committee considered a bill that would repeal the Common Core standards in West Virginia schools. It passed with little debate and now heads to the floor for the full chamber's consideration. But it was a bill relating to homeschooling that brought more discussion among the delegates. Liz McCormick has more.
House Bill 2793 contains many provisions relating to homeschooling. Among them, it removes the requirement that the person providing the homeschooling instruction have a high school diploma, and it permits a parent to administer the required nationally normed standardized test. Delegate Denise Campbell of Randolph County expressed some concern with the removal of this provision and questioned who would monitor the tests if parents were allowed to administer them. Mike Donnelly is an attorney with the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, as well as a father of children who are homeschooled. He addressed Campbell's concern.
The purpose of education is to help a child to attain the level of achievement that they're capable of attaining. And the standardized test doesn't really do that. So wherever you've got homeschool parents who have the ability to choose other approaches to assess their child, they're going to tend not to use that standardized test because they want feedback that's going to be illustrative, instructive to them, so they're going to ask a certified teacher, can you help me out here? What are you seeing here?
During the floor session, another bill relating to homeschooling was up for passage. Delegate Amanda Pasden, the House Education Chair, spoke on behalf of House Bill 2674.
This bill allows homeschool students to qualify for the Promise Scholarship without taking the GED. It essentially levels the playing field. Homeschool students will be subject to the same standards as students who attend public or private high schools. I urge passage.
House Bill 2674 passed 97-1. The one nay vote came from Delegate Dana Lynch, a Democrat from Webster County. Another 7 bills were up for passage, but all of them passed without any debate. In the House, the part of the floor session that allows remarks by members have turned tense on many days, and today was one of them. Senate Bill 357, the Coal Jobs and Safety Act of 2015, was on first reading, not at the debate stage. But fresh from his angry speech in the Government Organization Committee about prevailing wage, Delegate Mike Caputo of Marion County addressed a set of articles he'd sent to all the delegates. The articles referenced multiple mine disasters that happened in recent years, and Caputo called the bill anything but about mine safety.
There's only a few of us in here ever even been in a coal mine. And some of us have different views on this, and I respect that. But I'm telling you, when you're moving a major piece of equipment in a mine under extreme conditions, anything can happen, whether you have a trolley wire or whether you don't. And when coal miners are in by that move, if that move catches on fire, you can have all the transportation equipment you want, you can have all the communication equipment you want, you can have all the rescue equipment you want. That smoke's going to get them. And you're going to be casting a vote tomorrow on an amendment that I'm going to introduce to put this law back the way it was and the way it should be. So please, read this. Read this. Every coal company that testified to change that law not once talked about health and safety. They talked about increasing profits. And I will close by saying the most important thing to ever come out of a coal mine is a coal miner.
Delegate Randy Smith of Preston County was outraged by Caputo's statements.
I don't sit behind a desk every day making decisions. The men I work with don't pay me to go and sit behind desks. I go underground every day. I'm in these conditions. I know what I'm talking about. And I'm here to tell you that I take offense to being my character attacked on social media, in the newspaper, from colleagues in this chamber. The bottom line is, when it's said and done, I'm going to go back underground with those men. And anybody that thinks that I would pass a bill to put someone's life in danger and put my life in danger, all I can say is, it saddens my heart to think that they would think I would be that low. This bill here, this situation he was just talking about, this situation, this bill addresses. If it's energized trolley wire, you come out by it. It's as simple as that. That doesn't change. That's what this law here was made. That's what brought this law on, was energized trolley wire caused the fire. And it keeps that in place. But why should we stay in 1972? I would say within the next 5 years there'll be no trolley wire in a coal mines anywhere.
Senate Bill 357 will be on second reading, the amendment stage, tomorrow. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Liz McCormick in the House.
Now here's a look at what's coming up in the House tomorrow.
Among the bills up for passage, Senate Bill 60, requiring the Bureau for Public Health develop minimum guidelines for training individuals seeking a food handler permit or card that may be issued by local county health departments. House Bill 2103, requiring all state boards of licensure and examination to conduct nationwide criminal background checks on all applicants. House Bill 2202 to provide a more equitable disbursement of funds to county boards of education to lessen the budgetary impact of serving high-cost, high-acuity special needs students. House Bill 2268 removing the severance tax on timber. Among the bills on second reading, Senate Bill 357, the Coal Jobs and Safety Act. House Bill 2161 to adopt the Uniform Act on Prevention of and Remedies for Human Trafficking. And House Bill 2780 to authorize college and university governing boards to apply for funds available to law enforcement agencies for the benefit of campus police officers and to provide for compensation of employees for attending law enforcement training academies.
This has been the Legislature Today. We leave you tonight with a musical performance in the House today from students at the Schools for the Deaf and Blind in Hampshire County. I'm Ashton Mara. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by the following.
West Virginia University, online at wvu.edu. The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont, online at wvhtf.org.